Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, as you will have seen on the invite and the kind of description for today, we're going to kind of throw the whole focus of today's session on onto lived experience and the role of voice and experts by experience and whatever you might call them. We're going to kind of talk about that and how in the world of employment support we can kind of look to include people's experiences to really kind of centre what we do. We're very lucky to have my wonderful colleague Adele here. Adele is our voice manager. Is that your exact job title? Suddenly realised I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'm called voice and engagement manager, but like, let's not get hung up on the job titles. I'll explain what I do in a bit.
And so, I mean, Adele's been in place for probably about, 18 months now and had worked in a different role with us and has very much been instrumental in kind of whipping our organisation into shape in how we think and how we do things and really kind of helping to bring some cohesion to the work we do. And so I think on that note, I'm just going to hand over to Adele and let her get started and talking about what we've come here to listen to.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. So, um, yeah, thanks for having me here today. As explained, I'm a colleague of Lucy and Irana's at Centre for Ageing Better. And my role over the past 18 months has been to really build more intentional relationships with people who have personal experience, bit mouth, of a mouthful, but people who have personal experience of the issues that we seek to address, which is then critical to the quality and authenticity of our work. And those people who have personal experience of the issues we seek to address are who we're talking about when we're talking about experts by experience or people with lived experience or the voice of lived experience. That's who we're talking about. In your fields, it might be people who use your services if you are frontline service deliverers. As a charity, we don't deliver services, so slightly different. But what we're talking about is people who have experienced, for yourself, a service or looking to use a service. So I've been invited to share some of the practical things I've learned, which might in turn be of use to yourselves. But more importantly, I think to echo what Elizabeth was saying, we're here to learn from and support each other. So this will be a very interactive session where we share some of the challenges, solutions, questions, and ideas each of us have encountered. What I'm hoping to achieve is that by the end of today's session, that you'll have maybe a greater awareness of what other members in the network, how they're benefiting from working with experts by experience, maybe in the design, delivery or evaluation of services. We will hopefully take away some best practice tips, which we'll collate together in breakout rooms. And you'll also know where to go for some further reading and resources to really build a case for involving more people in your service delivery or design, because it's not always the practical tips and know-how. Sometimes it is about that culture change and finding those opportunities to really talk about how important it is. So I wanted to just start off because I've not met you before. Let me see, who have we got on the screen. I can see a lot of people have got cameras off at the moment. So what I'll do then is, if we could use the chat when we go into the breakout, so we'll be asking you to put your cameras on if that's okay. But for now, I'll ease you in. If you can hover over the chat and write just yes or no. Yes, there was sometimes you can, if you don't want to commit yourself. Do you currently involve people with lived experience of your service or having used those services in your work, in your service design? Because I don't know everybody's work, in your service design, or maybe evaluating what you do or gathering feedback. And for the purposes of the film, we've got 2 yeses, which I'm really pleased. 3 yeses. Oh, the yeses are trickling in. Don't be shy if you need to say no. It's This is absolutely what I'm trying to get a sense of is, have we got kind of a, a mixed experience in the room here, or actually are we all? So loads of yeses. Oh, so this is really great. So we're probably talking about exactly the same thing, which means the next bit I'm going to do now is just explain how we approached involving people at Centre for Aging Better. What I want to stress is I am not the expert, you are the experts, and we're all here to, learn from each other. This is about, right now I've got the floor so I can share what I've done. We're then going to go into breakouts. And actually, what I'd really like to see in the breakouts is where we've got all these yeses, which is great. um, oh, and we've got an A up, Sharon. I like that as well. But all these yeses in the chat, I'd really like us in the breakout then to kind of go, yes, and this is what we do, and this is what works for us, and this is the benefit it brings. So we can start learning that. And maybe if there's a few people who are saying, actually, I didn't put it in the chat, but we only do it sometimes, or I'm not sure if we do it right or anything, we can start to explore those challenges and support each other. So I am going to talk very quickly because I do think we are all on the same page with what we mean by lived experience. So let me just share my screen and just check the time as well. So, as I said, it's my role to develop a consistent approach to involvement and a more intentional approach with the people that we work with at Centre for Aging Better. But I just want to stress it doesn't mean we do it all the time, and it doesn't mean it's the same all the time, and it definitely does not mean it's always perfect. I'm just going to run through our starting point at Aging Better. So I'm going to talk about, just to get us all on the same page, some terminology, why we at Aging Better want to work with people with lived experience of the issues that we work on, some examples of how we do that, the benefit we're seeing, and the tools we've developed. That sounds really long. I've timed myself 5 minutes. Honestly, I'm just going to fire it at you. So let me just check my notes. I do have a habit of just going off. So terminology. We might go into the breakout, or even with me talking, I might be saying words that you don't use. People use lots of different terms. Lived experience, voice of lived experience, abbreviated just to voice, um, experts by experience, living experts. Some people, depending on what type of role you have, might be collecting case studies and call people storytellers. But essentially, what we're all talking about is individuals who have personal experience of the things we're working on that we want to know about. That's somebody with lived experience. So every time, at one end, every time you are asked for your feedback on a service that you've had, you've bought something, the next thing you know, you've got a feedback form in your inbox because you put your email address in to get a receipt. How was our service today? Was it satisfactory? You're giving feedback of the experience that you had as a customer. That's your lived experience in that moment. So that's as light touch as as it is there. That's just like one of the things. In other ways, we might be, you might have been asked to share your experience. Maybe you've been asked to join a patient participation group by your local doctor's surgery, or maybe all the yeses in the column there. You actually involve the people who you work with to maybe uh, make services that are a little bit more tailored towards them and people in their situation. And I hope that we can explore that. When we say involvement, engagement, participation, they do all mean different things technically to people who absolutely live and breathe engagement. But really, what we're talking about is things that people do. So, ways to involve the people with lived experience in activity that can shape or develop your work. That's all it means. Um, I'm going to move on to sorry, that was the definitions. It might have helped if I'd moved my slide along. So that was experts by experience and involvement I was really talking about. So why do we do this at Aging Better? And I would possibly expect that we all have similar reasons. So at Aging Better, we really are in our organisational approach, we all agreed that we cannot and are not the experts on other people's lives. Um, we want to learn and share that experience that, and I talk about older people, but I mean older people who have, like, so our work covers age-friendly work, age-friendly homes and ageism. So we're looking for people who've experienced poor quality housing, struggling with employment support or struggling to find work over 50. So when we're talking about why involving people with lived experience of that being important, it's because learning about what that means to somebody just enriches, on the one hand, the communications that we put out, helps us influence change. We can learn so much more, and it sits alongside, it does not replace the other forms of evidence we use when we're building up a picture of what it's like to age in England right now. So it's not that lived experience is better than.
Hiya, did you
Oh,
ring?
no. Oh, sorry, is somebody talking to me?
I think someone's not on mute.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought. Oh, well, I'm glad that's recorded for prosperity. Okay. Okay, what was I saying? Oh, so, lived experience sits alongside professional expertise as well. It has a place at the table. Our ambition at Centre for Ageing Better is to support an age friendly movement that can carry on with the passion and skills for campaigning for equity and respect long after we might cease to exist, or our funding or our work streams. So just some examples. Why do we want to have those more intentional relationships? um Chances are, I can only see a few people, which is a shame. But the people, like, have people used the spectrum of participation or seen it before? I can't really see anybody. Oh, thank you for shaking your head, Katie, and thanks for. Oh, you've just moved, but someone else nodded. Thank you. So, spectrum of participation is, people will refer to this. You don't need to get hung up about it. What it means is, and this is one that we created specific for Aging Better, but generally, when you're talking about engagement and people with lived experience, there tends to be a range of involving people in things that where they don't really have any power or autonomy to make a change. And at the other end, doing something quite, like, totally the opposite, where they're totally responsible for designing or coming up with solutions for something. So at Aging Better, we've kind of looked at, well, we put information out on our website and people can comment on it, or on social media. We might see that as participation. But on the other end, we're co-designing skills workshops to support independent campaigning. Somewhere in the middle here, we've had people testing our web resources. So a colleague was looking at, in our Good Homes Hub work, had developed this kind of home assessment tool, aimed at older people who were specifically living in housing that needed adaptations. And we asked some people with experience of that to test the product. So that's the kind of middle ground we're looking at there. And I just want to stress, there's a place for everything. We at Centre for Ageing Better, we want to move more to shared power, but there are challenges in that. Sometimes, we will discuss in our breakout groups that we might not feel it's always appropriate, or we might not have an appetite for that. It's a big, complex kind of system involving people. And I just want to reassure, there is room for everything. Co-production is something that I didn't put on my first screen. You'll hear that a lot when people talk about working with people with lived experience, and that would be great. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to stop anybody starting out if they thought that was all they had, that's all they had to aim for, because it can seem quite daunting. So the benefit we're seeing, and again, if you think of this, I really want to explore this in the breakouts as well. But some of the benefits we're seeing at Centre for Ageing Better is, we've been approached to apply for funding because of our work with Experts by Experience. Wouldn't have happened if we hadn't been working with people on a particular project and someone had noticed it. We've launched a new campaign this week, very public, last week actually, very public campaign about challenging ageism. We've had, I think our CEO was in back-to-back radio interviews, TV interviews. We've had press releases. Wouldn't have happened if we didn't also have volunteers talking about their own personal experience who we've worked with and really saying what's important to them. We've made some grant awards recently. We worked with a small group of people, and this is where I say it has a place alongside professional expertise. We weren't looking for individuals who had grant giving experience. We had that in the team. And we were, open and honest, we're not looking for that. What we were looking for was an interpretation of what the grant funding could be used for and whether that was good. And that was what somebody could bring from their own experience. And then we've got an upcoming exhibition in March, a photography exhibition, and that's been curated on the feedback from people who work closely with us. It's about representation in age and aging, and so people who are older themselves telling us what it's important to see in imagery reflected back to them. So they've then helped curate that. So there's a few different ways we've involved people, and if we think of that spectrum, it really goes across as well. I'd say we're not at that far right end yet where we want to be, but we've moved where we can from that position on the left. And final slide, you'll be glad, tools. So some of the things I'm very, very fortunate to have in place is that my role was created, which meant that one person could look out for how do we do this across the organisation. So we have an organisationally agreed approach, some principles to how we approach working with people with lived experience. We have a payment policy, and we've agreed and committed to paying people who give us their expertise from their personal experience. We have the safeguarding policy. We have a shared server where I can share the things that I'm learning and hearing. And we're a small organisation, so it's quite easy for me to get in touch with people and say, right, I've updated what I've heard this month. I think it's going to be of particular interest to you, you, and you kind of thing. Read it when you want. We've got templates, tips, and guidance all created from working with people. And then because I am there, I've got that hands-on support and advice. And we're also going to be producing some internal case studies. So that was a very whistle-stop tour of kind of what we do at Aging Better. But as I stressed, that's just what we do. And I wanted to be here to be able to kind of say, look, here's one example. What I want to do really is to go into some breakouts. So we're going to go into 3 breakout groups with myself, Lucy, and Irena. I know it's hard to talk when screens are blank, so if you're comfortable, please do put your camera and microphone on so that you can join in the conversation. It makes a huge difference to everybody. And your role in this breakout is to talk about what you've done. So I've really privileged to have this platform in front of you. Thank you so much. But I'm hoping that then you can say, oh, well, you've done that, we've done this, and talk about what you've been doing. Don't worry if you've not actually done anything and it's just a little bit too much to kind of say, oh, well, we do it a bit ad hoc, or we ask for feedback on something, or we send the questionnaire. It all contributes. We want to know what each other's doing. It's part of this network, so we can get to know who we might need to connect with outside. But also, got nothing to share a challenge. What would stop you doing those things? That's just as good, and we'll work through together what some of the things people are doing, what some of the challenges we're facing, and maybe some collective solutions to that. So we're going to break into 3 groups. There will need to be a volunteer in each group to feed back afterwards. That will not be myself, Lucy, or Irena. We'll help facilitate the conversation, but we want your feedback afterwards. And don't worry, Lucy, myself, and Irena will go through what we're doing in the groups. So, Henry, if we can go into groups, and actually I'm only 3 minutes over, so if you can set it for 20 minutes, that would be
Mhm.
great. Then we'll come back And don't worry, I won't be asking everyone to share everything in the group. I'll just go round and ask for one thing, maybe from each group, before we move on to some examples that Lucy's got to share with you. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm going to open them now.
Thank you.
So hopefully people will be moved in a second.
Thanks very much. I can see at the top it says join room, so everyone should see that across the ribbon at the top of their screen. Hi, everybody coming back.
Hi, Adele.
Thank you.
Hi, Adele.
Hi.
I have to say, Adele, we got cut off kind of quite abruptly. So, Deborah, I'm sorry you were in the middle of speaking when we got moved.
Can I just do a full disclosure in that the 20 minutes went really fast, and
So quick.
but Lucy, Rayner, as my colleagues, I just need to apologise to everyone, because I would usually say I am really good at timekeeping, right? It is my absolute. We will not go over time. I spent way too much time on the introductions, and we didn't, I don't think my group really benefited from what they could have in the room. So I'm hoping that pulling this back together, we can hear from each other, and I hope that that will redeem my bad time management in my group.
Adele, can I just quickly jump in and say, images came up in our chat in our group, and so I've just, for anyone who's not been to one of these sessions before, for anyone who's not heard someone from Centre for Aging Better promoting their image library, I've just shared it in the chat. We can come back to it at the end, but don't leave without clicking on that link and saving it.
Oh, have you put it in the chat? Lovely.
It's in the chat already, but we can kind of circle back to it, but just in case we forget, it's there. There we go.
No problem. Can I start with a different group then, because I let mine down? Somebody in Lucy's, and it doesn't matter if this isn't how the form of your group went. We will take and collate whatever we discuss, because whatever's discussed in a group is usually what needs to be discussed. So don't worry if it doesn't quite fit this. What I was hoping to do was at the start of the session, I said that by the end of today, I wanted to know a little bit more about on what your colleagues in this network were doing in relation to lived experience or involvement. That's what those introductions should have hopefully started to facilitate. So you'll be able to kind of see, or who's in the same boat as me, or who's got some interesting things going on. We're now going to go around and just catch up, maybe just one thing from each group. Maybe it was a challenge and some of the possible solutions that were maybe shared. And that should then start. I said that there'd be a takeaway document of kind of hints and tips. That should start that document. And what we'll do after this meeting is myself, Lucy and Irena will pull together anything we jotted down, because we won't have time to cover everything, put it down, write down the solutions that people were giving. And we've also got some resources that we're aware of and know of, because there are some huge questions like culture. How do you get culture change or buy-in? There are huge tomes on that, like, that we can absolutely direct you to. You could spend years of your life down that rabbit hole. Would somebody in Lucy's team?
We've already got a volunteer, Adele.
Oh,
it's the wonderful Katie has stepped forward.
Katie?
Yes.
Is there a challenge? I imagine there were more than one. Is there a challenge that came up in your team? Something that people are experiencing?
Yes, one of the main challenges that we found was how we engage with the older workers. So something that Diana had mentioned when she's working with economically inactive is how we reach certain people, from even if it's from a motivation point of view or a marketing point of view, and making sure we're getting that right rather than offending somebody or excluding a particular group.
Okay.
Something that was mentioned, if we were sending out marketing and it had like wrinkly hands on it or something, that we don't want to be excluding somebody who perhaps would benefit from that same support but maybe a younger worker.
Oh, so you've already given me a solution. So avoiding those negative stereotypes in marketing, I'm just writing this down, and promotional material. So your challenge was how to really reach those older workers without excluding anyone. Is that what I was hearing?
Yeah.
And one of your possible solutions was avoiding stereotypes in marketing and promotional material. And I'll put, because you said images, didn't you? Because you didn't actually give me that as a, I've just taken that because you brought that up in your challenge. Did you have another kind of solution that was discussed around that?
There was something that we're trying to work on at the moment. Is we're running a pilot to work with older workers, which actually starts next week in Darlington in the northeast. What we've tried to do, because it's we work with older workers on a daily basis in multiple contracts that we run, but what we've tried to do is seek feedback from a staff point of view and also a client point of view to initially pull together a plan of what we think is needed and what people have initially requested.
Yeah.
But we're going to seek feedback throughout the pilot and at the end to see what worked, what didn't work, what people found useful, what people would like to add in. So for us, it's just a little bit of a work in progress at the moment.
That's wow. I really am just so impressed. Like, just because that's, you know, when we think about involvement, sometimes the challenge is, oh, I've not got time to even think about that kind of thing. You've got a kind of, you know, how do we reach older workers? How do we make sure we're not excluding any particular groups of older workers? You've got, right, marketing material, that's one thing. But another thing, if I can, like, what I was hearing was that pilot testing a program with older workers, but you are seeking feedback throughout. It isn't something that happens at the end, it's something that happens throughout. And it sounds like on quite a few different elements about their experiences. Thank you very much. Oh, I hate to cut you off, but I'm just conscious of time. Somebody from Irana's group, have you got something different? Don't be shy.
As was the evaluation, is that we when we evaluate things, we do clear feedback.
Oh, in our group, yeah. Sorry, yes. I was just trying to see who was speaking. Thank you, Gwen. Thanks for coming forward from our group. Let me write that down. Yeah.
So we was looking at clearer feedback when we ask question, evaluate situation, that we give feedback, and we don't sort of wait until the next evaluation before we give the feedback. It's more regular.
Yeah. Let me just write that down. So the challenge there was, it was about gathering feedback, and what prompted that for us was surveys, didn't it? And the massive challenge that tends to bring up. And so did anyone from my group want to say anything else on that? It's not a must-have, it's just I'm typing. Okay, that's great. We've got that one. And as I said, all groups have got notes. Come on, Irana's group.
I have to say, Adele, we went at it from a slightly different angle. We went at it from the positives, so that was where we were focusing. So if someone would like to talk about, although actually Nahida did have a challenge that you brought up right at the beginning that we didn't even discuss.
A positive is great. It's just from experience, we know it's easier to talk about challenges sometimes, which is what gets the conversation going. So yeah, positives or negatives, you want to give me something to pop on that we can learn from?
Yeah, so what oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
After you.
No, go ahead, Neil. Honestly,
go
on,
ahead, Neil. Go on, Neil.
So I mean, I'm talking, but I didn't actually get to talk about this on the sessions. However, I think this is really important. And I can't remember who said this, but run open sessions and Facebook feedback at the beginning of a program, so that you build the program around what's wanted rather than what we think is needed. And open sessions from a forum that already existed created a program or a service that delivered for the right age group and the right demographic, which is something that is really important. If you get it off on the right foot, then obviously you'll move forward in the right direction.
And am I hearing, like, what you're saying is do that kind of scoping work up front? What do people need? Ask the people who need the thing what they need, so you can then design your service, product, whatever it is, offer around them, rather than thinking that you know what they need, testing it, and then having to go back. Is that what you're saying, Neil?
Yeah.
Oh, love
and
that.
And just to add to that, I got cut off. I'd only just started and I said, stop making assumptions, that it's incredibly dangerous when, and it ties in exactly with what Neil said and the theme of what we all discussed, which was because there are too many assumptions made, particularly in programs where they're quite prescriptive, that you making the assumption that, you know, the worker somehow is different from a younger worker, and they're not necessarily. You should be looking at the worker for their ability to be able to do something rather than because they've hit a demographic. So they were 49 and 364 days the day before, and all of a sudden they're in a different group. I don't prescribe to that, and I think it's damaging to put labels on employability programs when we all work with people who share common barriers and disabilities and learning disabilities, and we all work with those who are perfectly able. And given the average tenure of work in the UK is 4 years, what's such a big issue about a 50-year-old going to work? Is it that they're more expensive, or that they just lack the skills because they've never been invested in? So, and we could argue that that's the same for a 30-year-old as it is for a 50-year-old.
Deborah, thank you for coming in there. I've written that down. That stop making assumptions is a really nice thing. That was very quick. I'm going to hand over to Lucy for some more thing. But that was a very succinct way of rounding off that what we're saying is just talk to people, ask people, don't make those assumptions. There's much more discussed in each group there, and this is the tip of the iceberg. We've not had chance to delve into anything really meaty today. So we're going to collate some of those things that have been discussed in the teams and how you've jointly shared solutions. And I think just to recap on what we're saying, while it has been light touch, I think we're all at very different stages of our kind of involvement journeys. You know, we've seen, you know, Katie, you're going to be kind of measuring and checking on a program as it happens. We've got you talking about leaflets, we've got talking about service design, we're talking about feedback. These are very different ways, and we're all doing very different things. But what, just to reassure everybody, is that I live and breathe this stuff. So I talk to other people. You know, your day job is supporting people. Mine isn't doing that. Mine is like, how do we involve people? Like that's almost like another skill that you have got, that you are adding to your the support services that you offer, right? So in my world, I can reassure you, nobody has this perfect. It's about making sure, as Deborah was saying, that you just keep asking questions. You just keep asking people so that you can keep providing what needs to be provided. And especially when people don't have that voice or platform to do so. So thank you very much. I'm going to cut myself off. I've got one more thing, which is if you've you know, heard people talking about what they're doing, please reach out to them in the chat. If you want to share, like Henry, I don't know how people know the contact details, but if you mutually agree to swap details and you can do it in a private chat, please do so. That's what this space is for, to support one another. I'm going to hand back to you, Lucy, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, Lucy, your microphone's gone. You're not muted, but we can't hear you.
It's muted. I've got a second mute and
You're
a
back.
delivery arrived, so I had to go and do it. So I wanted to make sure I was double muted just in case. So I'm going to share my screen. We wanted to share some of the things that we've done around work, around employment support that we've done at Aging Better. They're all a little bit different. And we wanted to talk about the pros and cons of all of those things. And so Irena and I are just going to talk through a couple of slides. There's only 3. Just so you can kind of get a sense of what we're doing and what that's like. So, Irena, are you happy to start? You're on mute.
Excellent. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Super. So yes, as Adele said, we're not really a delivery organisation as such. We get involved in research projects so that we can share our learning with other people. And there have been several projects over the last few years that we've been involved with where we have used voice or lived experience within the research. So the first project, which was in Greater Manchester, the employment support development, I think this might have been prior to Adele being in role as she is now, but we were researching employment support, and we had commissioned an organisation called Humanly to co-design a project with us. So it was actually Humanly who went about engaging people locally to support the development of the project. They invited different people to collaborate on different aspects of the project, although some of those people were involved in multiple testing forums. So the advantage of working like that meant that there was a broader range of opinions that could be considered. They did use an agency, and that was effective at the time because we didn't necessarily have our own networks of people that we could call on in that location. The flip side, of course, is that using more people means that you don't necessarily build a stronger relationship with individuals across a period of time. So you've got to kind of balance the pros and cons, I guess. One major point of learning for that particular project and for those particular people that we were trying to engage was that sending out flyers really didn't work in that situation in terms of bringing people on board. It was very much more personal contact and links made through trusted contacts that I think were the most effective there. Lucy, should we just go on to the next slide? So Job Centre Plus Customer Roundtables, this is a very recent interaction that we've had. So we held 2 roundtables with job seekers aged 50 plus, and we did consult with Adele in preparing for these sessions. We were very fortunate to have her input in that. They were facilitated discussions with the aim of sharing experiences of looking for work through the Job Centre Plus route. The sessions were held in a neutral space, and we felt that that was really helpful. It put people at ease, and it supported them to be able to speak more openly. So as well as consulting with Adele in preparing for those sessions, we collaborated very closely with the 50 plus champions in Manchester and Birmingham. And that meant that we were able to identify participants, or they supported us in identifying participants. But we also worked very closely on agreeing the questions that we wanted to find answers to. And that was really important, that it was both helpful to DWP as an organisation and also helpful to us. So a lot of thought went into setting up the sessions, creating a positive environment. We talked about the phrasing of questions, setting ground rules, just to make sure that there was that comfortable atmosphere. I think we all felt that those sessions were actually really beneficial and really positive, but the main challenge for us was that they were fairly large groups. I don't know, large in terms of our working. So there were 10 or 12 people sitting around a table. And although we had 2 voice recorders to capture the conversations, transcribing the content of the discussions afterwards was really time consuming and really quite difficult. Obviously, we'd been in the sessions, so, you know, we could remember certain conversations, but it was actually capturing all of that really valuable information that was really quite tricky afterwards. So Lucy, do you want to talk about Birmingham? That's a slightly different approach as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Irena said. The transcribing of those notes took a long time. So another project that we have been working on is our redundancy support project in the West Midlands. And in a similar way to the Greater Manchester project, we wanted to kind of design a new type of service. So in this case, it was a redundancy support service. And we worked with a design agency to do this. And we really wanted to kind of centre lived experience within this process. And we considered lived experience in the round. We didn't just talk about people who were service users or people who had been made redundant, but we also wanted to consider sorry, people who actually delivered services. So what was their experience like of the services they delivered and how people were accessing them? And we also wanted to think about people who commissioned services. And so we kind of really dug deep into all the different sides of lived experience, because it isn't always just, oh, you're the service user, you've got the experience, that's the only thing we need to consider. Sometimes we need to kind of think about all the different moving parts. But the thing that we did that was really interesting with this project was that we appointed 2 lived experience consultants to the project team who were paid for their time, and their input was considered of equal weight to the employed staff who were working on the project. They were Steve and Suzanne. This is not Steve and Suzanne in the picture, just to clarify. Could be Steve and Suzanne, it's not. They were fab. They had come to us because they'd been part of an earlier part of the research project. And so when we moved from kind of early research into prototyping and design, we were like, we think these guys are going to be the ones to do it. We know that they've got exactly the right experience. So some of the pros about having people engaged in this way was that they just made the stories come alive. Every time we were talking, they kind of brought insights that we could never have known. You know, these are people who were from the region, were from the sector that we were working in, were over 50 and had been made redundant. And so they were bringing lots of elements together in a way that was really useful. And they were really responsible for a few key light bulb moments for the project team, really understanding actually that in certain redundancies that it's very secretive and people aren't allowed to talk about things, and actually what did that look like? How did that play into the isolation that we already knew was there? So they were really kind of key to having those light bulb moments. And because they weren't in the day-to-day work, they could challenge us, they could ask us the questions that were like, but why are you thinking about this, or why are you doing this? And actually really kind of pushing us, and us enabling them to push us to kind of think outside the things that we're doing. And the other pro about working with people over a longer period of time in a kind of more intensive way was that it was like a real kind of continuity and a richness that they brought by building up a longer relationship, rather than a kind of dipping in and out and kind of only working with people when you need something and then not working with them again. It really kind of built this much bigger picture and this kind of greater understanding, both for them of the project and for us of their experience. It was, in terms of cons, it was expensive. You know, we paid for their time. We paid people because they were experts, but it was worth its weight in gold, and it kind of really brought something that we wouldn't have had otherwise. It can be time consuming, making sure that they're up to speed. They've not been in all of the development meetings you've had. They've not been in all of the meetings with the funder, and they've not had all of those project team meetings. They're actually really taking the time to make sure they were up to speed. Time consuming, but worth it. And the only other con I think I would flag is that if you're working in this way with people, you have to be really conscious of timings and people's time. So they had different days that they could do and days they couldn't do. And if for whatever reason someone was sick or someone had something else come up and we needed to cancel or change a meeting, it's not as easy to do that in a kind of ad hoc way as you might do with your team, who are all there, who are all employed to do the thing, and you can just go in their diaries and just do it. So you just need to kind of think about that a bit when you're kind of working in that way with people. I'm going to stop sharing. Those are the examples that we have of the different things that we've tried, and we've got a bit of time. So I just wanted to ask if there was any questions about those that people had. We'll share those slides as well, don't worry. No questions? Any questions for Adele? No questions for Adele?
No, I think I'm looking. There are no hands up. No, nothing in the chat. So I think we're good.
Is there anything, Adele, that you want to wrap up on?
No, actually, I'm fine. I think we were so, it was quite light touch the amount of time that we had. So I think I did the summing up like at the end of that session.
Brilliant. What I'm going to share in the chat is for those of you who are interested, who don't know about it already, we have a quarterly newsletter that we send out sort of just ahead of these meetings, about a month before these meetings, and they often give you a bit more information about the topics that are coming up. They talk about some stuff we're doing more broadly for the Centre for Aging Better. They talk about things we've learned. So we did, in the last issue, we did a kind of question and answer with Vicky, who was one of the 50 plus champions who'd been part of those workshops that Arena spoke about, lived experience workshops, and she kind of talked about what that meant to her. And there's normally space for you to kind of respond to or interact with questions, whether it might be sharing case studies or the work that you're doing, so we can really kind of capture that. I know you shared loads of really good examples of the things that you're doing today. You know, Katie, you were talking about something that's starting on Monday. So there's chance to kind of share and places to kind of share that information with us. Henry, I know you'll be sharing the slides when we get them over to you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, Katie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just sorry, I'm not. I know you'd mentioned about sharing contact details, and would it be possible if we could just put our name, organisation, and perhaps an email address in the chat, just in case there was any follow-up we need for different people, if obviously for those who want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone who wants to share their name and contact details in the chat, that is absolutely fine. Go ahead. We can. Henry, is the chat still available afterwards, or is that something, because it's through Eventbrite, we'll need to?
No,
share?
it should be, yeah.
Brilliant. Great.
Hopefully, I'll set it anyway. But, yeah.
Fab. Yeah, anyone who wants to kind of share their details, that would be great. And yeah, the link I've shared for the newsletter is kind of signing up to it and kind of giving your permission for us to contact you with that. Nahida, I can see your hand is up.
Yeah, hi. It was something that we that I brought up at the in the breakout room. It was just about the issue around if anybody's got any information or any policies they want to share or anything around paying volunteers and the kind of discussion around that, or how much people think is safe to offer, or incentives or anything like that. So we work with people who are on benefits a lot of the time. So we don't want anything that's going to have, those any kind of repercussions. Obviously, it's not going to be hundreds of pounds, but we've had those issues before where people are scared to take incentives because they think it's going to affect their benefit. And then sometimes we can't give cash. A lot of the time we can't give cash. So it's gift vouchers. And then when you give gift vouchers, they don't shop at those shops.
So, I mean, I can see Adele raring to kind of chip in on this one, so I will pass over to her in a minute. But yes, we've had exactly all of those issues. We're very clear when we work with people that that they should disclose this because this could affect their benefits. People can opt in of being paid. They can opt out of being paid if they are worried too much that it's going to be too much of a faff to kind of log it all. Adele, do you want to kind of add a bit more on that? Because you've done so much work with this.
Yeah, this took us a long time, took us 6 months to sort out, which sounds quite quick actually. Nobody has got this sorted. As soon as you pay somebody, they are no longer a volunteer. And so DWP
does that include incentives, like if you give them a gift voucher?
So yeah, so anything, a gift voucher is just money in a different form. So you I can't give advice on that. And I think when you ask different official organisations, they will give you different advice as well. But essentially, any monetary compensation for somebody's time, you are paying them for doing something for you. But that said, I can share with you a number of different policies that different places have. I can tell you where to go and have a look.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much, Adele.
Yeah, no problem. I'll pop my email address in the chat, Nadia.
Yeah.
Nahida, sorry.
No, it's fine. I'll put mine in as well. Thank you.
So tricky, isn't it? Because no one wants to kind of put anyone in a difficult situation, and but everyone wants to kind of like reimburse people or remunerate people for the work that they've done. But yeah, it's just so complex.
Oh, I'm really sorry because I don't know if other people have got 2 screens. Jamie, did you have your hand up? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I didn't have kind of that much to add to inform what you'd said, but from kind of a research perspective, I guess, as standard for DWP, it would be that we would use gift vouchers, and I guess just a lived experience, because I know kind of the area that you're working in, the lived experience panel that we're doing with refugees at the moment, I think we're paying £26 an hour, but that's for the Home Office, but just, I guess, to give an idea from our perspective.
That's very generous.
I also felt that as well, but it's really valuable to the research.
That's really good. No, that's absolutely fantastic, because we really struggle because nobody either has the budget or nobody even thinks it's something that we should do, and then you feel like a beggar when you say to researchers, you know, you come in to do some research, but do you mind just giving 20 quid each to 6 people who are going to give like 3 hours of the time to you? And they're like, no, it's not in the budget.
Yeah, as a standard, we would include it when we're kind of budgeting for our projects. We would include an incentive to make sure that's kind of costed for. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Jane.
I've just noticed, Henry, you've put a little plug in the chat. Did you want to cover that, or?
Yeah, I mean, the Institute for Employment Studies have been commissioned by, oh God, what's the name now? There we go. By the Construction Industry Training Board, and into career pathways into the construction industry. And yeah, as I said, they're looking to speak to stakeholders or organisations who support with that. So if you are an organisation or know of one, I've got a couple in my mind, but yeah, just thought I'd ask. Thanks for on the call. But yeah, so just email policy@ersa.org.uk if you want to. But thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Henry. Final call. Any more? Anyone else with anything a burning desire to share something and they've not had that moment to do it? Now is your big moment. In which case, we will give you like 15 minutes of your time back. Use it wisely. Get a cup of tea or a cake or whatever it is you want to do. But enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you so much for your time and everything you shared with us today.
Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.